like one of the issues that I think a lot of people run into when they're using their little 2-channel interfaces and such, and especially when they're using the built-in interface like in the computer, is not being able to get it loud enough for their headphones and such. Maybe your headphone amp isn't very strong, or maybe your speakers. And so that's part of the reason why everything runs so hot in that master fader in the DAW.
Right.
And like everybody like uses that master fader as like a volume controller for their speakers. And it's like, it's not. And you have a volume control. It shouldn't be. I know that some circumstances do like create that problem because that's the only way for them to get it loud enough to really hear it. Which is why you got to make sure that your interface, has enough gain on it or whatever.
Or to get yourself like some type of a headphone amplifier. Those aren't hard to come by. They're not super expensive.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of options. Like,
and this kind of like brings out like the, I guess, like purist in me. I'm not like an audio purist at all, but this is like part of it. But having like dedicated pieces instead of just having like an all-in-one unit, like an audio interface, having an audio interface is great. And it's great because it made audio recording accessible to everyone at an affordable cost. Like it's super affordable. The downfall is that you have one unit that's doing
everything.
Everything. It's the preamp for the mic. It is the AD conversion, DA conversion.
The monitor
controller. Your monitor controller. Yeah. And if you have like dedicated pieces for all those, a dedicated monitor controller, dedicated headphone amp, dedicated AD and DA converters, and dedicated preamps, those, although they're really expensive, there's a reason they're expensive. There's high quality components in them versus just like an integrated circuit that's doing everything.
Mm-hmm. Right. And if you don't know that those things are all individual things, or they can be individual things, like its own preamp and its own converter. Like I was eyeballing a ADDA converter. It was Ben that turned me on to this one. I always blame you for this. No, it's like a $2,000 converter. All it does is it converts analog to digital and digital back to analog. And it's 2 channels. It's $1,000 per channel, right?
Is it a common green one?
It's actually not. I'm actually thinking of a completely different product.
There's plenty of products.
Yeah, there's a lot
in that price range.
Yeah,
right. No. Yeah. But all it did was convert signal, and it's like, well, why would I want that? Why wouldn't I want preamps on it? Well, because it's really, really freaking good, and it's pristine, and it's clean, and you're not introducing other elements or artifacts or other things into it, and well, every decision you make affects your headroom, and you need to be cognizant of that.
Well, every piece of gear has its own headroom, has its limit. So, like a mic, you can distort a mic at the capsule or at the transducer. You can distort a preamp. You can distort converters. Converters have headroom, and so that's also like kind of another reason why like it's important to get high quality stuff if you want to make higher quality recordings, so that you can take full advantage of that full headroom and not worry about that. Whereas on like a smaller interface, if you're getting a smaller interface, you're probably not at the level where that's important to you, though.
I mean, the point here is not to like tell everybody that
you need to spend $2,000 on a converter, at least $1,000 on each preamp. And if you're not spending $10,000 on your monitors, you probably shouldn't even be listening. I'm kidding. If you're wondering, I'm joking.
But yeah, I mean, it's funny because when you were explaining that, Bryant, I was like, oh my goodness, my signal flow right here. I have exactly that. I have a separate monitor controller, a separate headphone amp, a compressor, and an interface that's function as the ADDA converter, but they're all separate. And I was like, oh my goodness, I've become a snob. I've got them all separate. But no, that's the point, is that it's fine to use them all together, but there is a reason why there's the high-end equipment that is all separate. And there's problems that do happen when they're all lugged together too. And so, I mean, I think going back to my original point was that just to pay attention to what all the gain stages you have, and that you do have a volume knob, an output knob, and your speakers have a volume knob. And if you see yourself like reaching for that master fader and cranking it up to get everything louder, then you probably should look at how you can get some volume. Yeah, or get some volume some other way. Like if you're like, I mean, I know there's some computers with built-in speakers where people are working on their projects and, you know, working on your song, and you crank up that master fader so you can get some volume out of the speakers that are built into the computer. Like that's not an ideal setup, you know, but if you have some studio monitors that you can buy, they have plenty of gain that you can actually, you know, crank up your little interface and get plenty of volume out of that. So you don't have to be cranking that master fader.
I think if we could sum up even all of that, like about gear and whatnot, it's not that we're telling you to spend $1 million on gear or whatever, but you have to understand the limits of those gear. I think we've said that like a couple times, but like not like a Scarlett interface is not the best interface in the world. And that's okay. That it's great at what it does. And that's not a bad thing, but understand that that's not going to get you the same results as like a mix engineer in $100,000 studio. I don't think anybody has that kind of expectation, but like sometimes you have to temper your expectations. Like, again, like if you're mixing off a laptop and you only have laptop speakers, there's not much else you can do besides getting studio monitors or something else to kind of manage that. And that's okay. Like understand those things.